Mine says record.
There you go.
Yay!
You know where it was.
We're recording.
That's right. So everybody's got to speak up or shut up. Okay. So we're going to start. I'm Steve Zirinsky, as everybody probably knows. I am president of the Society of Australasian Specialists, and we are in the process of rebuilding the society, and we're starting that with a series of lectures, which I presume everybody has a copy of for the pretty much for the whole year. And if not, email me. And I will send it to you later. And tonight we have Jeerry Weirich talking about Tassie. He calls it the I'm blanking on it. What is it? The
Manuscript cancels of the deprived offices.
Yeah, I call it the depraved offices. That's what I was trying to think of. But
Right.
yeah, so. And then everybody will introduce themselves, and then we'll go on mute, so that way Jeerry can present, and everybody can just I guess break into it if they have a question or something like that. So I'm Steve Zirinsky. I'm a full-time architect. I'm a part-time dealer, as everybody probably knows, and I'm going to pass it on now. Next person, I guess I'll start. I'm just going to go down the list here. Jeerry.
Yeah, Jeerry Weirich. I've been collecting Tasmania since about 1983, when my first child was born, but I've been collecting stamps for over 60 years. So unlike a lot of people that took a break while their working years, I continued to collect for all 60 years. So I've accumulated quite a bit of junk. So, but I'm looking for some feedback from tonight's presentation, so I'm hoping that you'll enjoy it.
Okay, thanks, Jeerry. Fred?
Yes, Fred Daines. I have been collecting for about 70 years and have had an interest in the South Pacific for maybe the last 40, 50 years, 45 years. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Fiji Islands, and so I have a particular interest in Fiji.
Oh.
So, move on to the next person.
Okay, Steve S.
Oh, Steve Schumann. Basically, I'm interested.
Oh, it used to.
Anyway, Steve Schumann. Basically, I'm interested in the postal stationery of the British Commonwealth in general, and mint and used, and I just try to keep up on every area.
Well, that's nothing to do. That's no big deal. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good to see you, Steve. Bruce?
Yes, good morning. Well, for me, it's good evening to you. Yeah, Bruce Jackson. I live in Longwood in South Australia. I haven't been collecting that long, probably 8 or 9 years. From collecting just general Australia, I then started to specialise in South Australia. So I collect South Australian stamps, I collect South Australian postal stationery and postal history, and I collect railway parcel stamps of South Australia.
Ah, okay. Very nice. Okay, David Foote.
Hi, David Foote. I was born in England, raised in West Australia. I got a PhD in the US and live in Toronto, Canada.
Somebody hasn't moved around a lot. Okay.
I'm interested in Pacific Islands, West Australia, and I have a topical collection on eclipse philately, chasing solar eclipses around the world.
Ah,
Nice.
very good.
Okay. Let's see, because now my screen is not keeping it organized, so it seems to be moving around. So I'm having a little trouble here. Gary Watson.
That's me. Greetings, all. I've been a collector since I was 4, and another one who never gave it up for any reason. And so now I've got, 65 years under my belt. Along the way, I escaped from law and became a professional philatelist in 1979. And you should all know my current iteration, which is Abacus Auctions, but I'm checking as we go, as people are introducing, and I've seeing a couple who either aren't on our books or haven't done anything with us for a long time. And I'm thinking, how do you add to your collections without dealing with abacus? But and enough of the self-promotion. I have collected a lot of different things over the years. My current passion is Australian destination mail from Federation 1901 to decimal currency 1966. I also collect the date stamps of Melbourne, which is now a 60-year collection. And I collect elements of Ceylon, notably World War II. And in the last couple of years, I've started collecting the early undivided back postcards of Australia. And postcards of Ceylon along the way as well. So, yeah, I'm busy enough with all of that. I have to keep avoiding going outside my parameters. Otherwise, that'll be another rabbit hole I'll end up falling into.
All right, thank you. Okay, David Hopper.
David Hopper from Toronto. Occasionally run into Mr. Foot, but not that often, not as often as we should. My initial serious collecting was official stamps and mail of British New Guinea and Papua. And I liked Papua, I wanted to collect it, but if you had holes in the stamps, they were much cheaper than if they didn't have holes in the stamps. So I went off to the officials area. The very first significant piece of purchase I ever made was from Zerinsky. But anyways, that Papuan collection was sold through Abacus last year. I found it to be a reasonably enjoyable experience. It worked well.
Thank you, David.
So there's your promotion for the day.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
I have a pretty serious Queensland collection. There's a collector in North America named Ed Williams, who wrote the Northern Territory Postal History book. I bought his Queensland collection from him for a pittance. He asked us an astonishingly low number, and I gave him a little more than that even. Lots of Queensland postmarks. I have a Queensland TPO exhibit that gets vermeils or golds when I exhibit it. I have a couple of oddball ones. The Living Together stamps used on cover. The Australian Living Together stamps.
Yep.
Every denomination used on cover. So I have one of the best ones of those, I think, is a pair of 2 envelopes with those stamps on them that were used as movie props. They have Living Together stamps on them, were used as movie props. They show up in the movie. That's kind of cool. I also have a 1978 Trees stamp, Australian Trees series. I got a 1.5 frame exhibit on that stuff. So 1.5 frame's kind of useless, but there it is. Also the Australian offices in Great Britain. So the C of A Perfins, the New South, all the various offices that were established in Great Britain at the time. So, and I do a lot of modern decimal postal rate stuff from Australia. There's all kinds of, given 5 zones and a couple of surface mail categories, any given time, there's a lot of rates to collect. So I've been, that keeps me entertained, and it's quite inexpensive because it's generally in the junk category. So that's me.
Thanks. Fred Lawrence.
I'm Frederick Lawrence in Gilbert, Arizona. I've been a collector of Scouts and Scouting on stamps since 1960. And some years ago, Stephen helped me acquire some pre-production material for modern era scouting issue from the Tonga archives. And I've been a friend since then.
Well, you can stay. The rest of you can go. That's it. Okay, Mark DeSerio.
Yes, hello, and thank you, Stephen, for inviting me to this gathering.
Just be nice.
I collect Australian postal stationery, particularly Victoria and the Australian period. And it's nice to see some people that I've corresponded with recently, like Rod. Nice to put a face to a name. And Steve, I haven't seen Steve Schumann for ages, but nice to see you as well. So thanks again, Stephen, for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. Pleasure to have you here. Jim Edwards.
Hi, Jim Edwards. I'm in East Hampton, Long Island, in New York. I collect all of really Australia till about 1936, mint and used. I've really been specializing mostly over the last half dozen years or so with South Australia. Tony Pressgrave spoke last time. His collection mirrors mine in some ways on the departmental stamps. Gary's provided a lot of those that I've purchased over the years. I also collect South America and Mexico. Got started there for personal reasons. And about 40 years ago, when I decided to get a little more serious and specialize, I realized my Spanish wasn't good enough to be an expert since I just couldn't, pick it up and read all the things I needed to read. My Australian was half decent. So I stuck with that and enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks. Nana Porter. I don't know who that is exactly, but
I picture.
hard to say. But all right. Next will be then Richard Moss.
Oh, good evening. I've been a collector since I was 12 years old, and I was encouraged by the school stamp club. Like most of the people of my generation, we started off by collecting general modern Commonwealth stuff. I got in originally. I got into George VI used. Then I started on New Hebrides. Got lots of encouragement on that. And things moved on in the 1970s, and I started collecting quite seriously modern GB definitives. And by 2000, I was collecting Tristan da Cunha, and was lucky enough to go there as well.
Oh, wow.
But by the mid-teens, mid-tens, as some stuff from New Hebrides came up, I thought, well, I'll fill a few holes, and I've got back into it quite seriously since then. On top of that, for the last 16 years, I've been the treasurer of the Pacific Island Study Circle, which I think some of you will know. Well, I know Steve and Gary know the circle. So that's basically my history.
Very good. Thanks for joining us. I know it's late for you guys over there in the UK. My apologies, but only so much. Okay, Rod Bucco.
Yes, I collect mainly New Guinea, NWPI. I study the overprints and the associated flaws of the Australian Ruse and George V. I'm currently doing a checklist on the Australian George V Halfpenny Electro 3. That's in progress. And I'm also working on a checklist for the Die 2 1 shilling Rue. I've completed most of the research on that. And I'm also collecting the 2D Rue stationary Die 2A. I'm looking at all the flaws and trying to identify the 5 cliches, and possibly a 6th one was used as a substitute on the sheet of stamps. I also collect New South Wales cut down relief date stamps. And I spent a few weeks in Wollaston Futuna, so I collect the current postal history of Wollaston Futuna. Thank you.
Very nice. I think I've covered everybody. Is there anybody I missed? Well, then that's speak now or forever hold your peace. So I just want to, I don't know if I said it before, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that that the SAS, is this year we're going to have these series of lectures, and by developing the interest, we'll get the organization going again, and we'll get the magazine being published online for probably $15 a year, and we'll have advertising, and then we'll try to have meetings around the world as things progress, but one thing at a time. It's more important to everybody, this is actually, and from all intents and purposes, this is like having an international right now, because we have all these people from all around the world. And I don't want to talk too much more about it because I think we all know what's going on. I'd like to now figure out a way to transfer everything over to Jeerry. So I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves except for Jeerry, if you don't mind. And then I'm going to, okay, Jeerry, how do I share a screen? what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press share screen and see what happens. Okay.
No, just let
Oh,
Jeerry share his screen. That's all you got to do.
okay.
Well, first of all, I need to send you a request to allow me to share,
Okay. I got it.
which I did.
And I sent it to you.
All right.
You should be able to. There we go.
Oops.
I wonder if you clicked on the first slide, that would make it larger, take over the whole screen.
There we go.
Click on
Yeah.
slideshow. That's what works.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve. All right. So tonight I'm going to talk about one of my favorite areas of Tasmanian philately, and that's manuscript cancels, but specifically what I refer to as the deprived offices of the first allocation period, which is 1853 to 1861. And I have, let's just say, five introductory slides to try to set the stage. And then the rest of the presentation, which is about another 25 slides, will be focused just on the deprived offices. And Gary, I will let you know that you'll probably see many items that I've purchased from you.
Well, I hope so. I don't know how to mute. I'm sorry.
Okay, so there are four periods of Tasmanian postal history. There's the pre-adhesive period from 1803 to up to 1853. November 1st, 1853, they issued their first stamps, and at the same time issued their first cancellors, and they're known as barred numeral cancellors. This is the area that I'm going to focus on. Second allocation period from 1861 to up to the Federation period. And basically, in March of 1861, they withdrew all of the cancellors that they had issued on the 1st of November of 1853, and then replaced them all with another set, which is known as the second allocation period. And the numbers are different, so you can distinguish between the numbers that were first allocation period from the second allocation period. And they also then started issuing circular date stamps, and this was over time that eventually all the post offices had those. And then the Federation period is this last period from 1901 to 1200. They removed all of the barred numeral cancellators from service. There was a lot of criticism at the time that the barred numeral cancellators were obliterating these stamps known as pictorials that, for the most part, the Tasmanians didn't like, but they removed them and replaced them with circular date stamps. And so that's where we stand. And again, I'm going to focus on this first allocation period. Okay, as mentioned, 1st of November, 1853, issued stamps. All open post offices at that time, which were there 51 of them, received one or more cancellors. Launceston received 2. Hobart received 4. And they were numbered 10 to, at the time, 65, which were allocated. There were a total of 65 produced, but they only allocated up to 65 on the on the 1st of November. But after the 1st of November, there were new offices opened, and there were about 65 of them. 3 or 4 is a debate in terms of how many actually received cancellors after the 1st of November. But about 65 were opened, and they were not delivered or not given canceling devices. So there are what I'm referring to as the deprived offices. Okay. And then there was a lot of consternation within the main post office at Hobart in the early 1854 period, where a lot of the postmasters were not canceling stamps, or they were being canceled very lightly, such that the Postmaster General thought they could be reused. Okay, so on the 9th of May of 1854, they issued instructions to deface stamps with pen and ink with a grid mark. Okay, and this was primarily because the interior post offices or postmasters were complaining that they didn't have the proper ink to use the canceling device. All right. So beginning in May of 1854, almost all of the interior post offices began marking with ink. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the cancellation hand stamp cancelers, the numbers themselves are quite rare. Okay. And I have a list to show that in a little while. And again, also in March of 1861, then all of these first allocation cancelers were removed. And that's the beginning of the second allocation period. Okay. So hopefully you can see this on my screen. A lot of the faces here are covering up the stamps on the right. But anyways, so this is, I just want to show you first the towns that received a hand stamp. You can see this is one of 3 pages here. And on the left-hand side of the chart, of the table, excuse me, you can see that these towns also were using manuscript cancels. Okay. And in some cases, like, let's just see here for Brighton, 3rd line down, the hand stamp of 12 is extremely rare, but the numeral manuscript is actually quite common. And that is the top stamp on the right, the green 2-penny chalon. That's a 12. All right. In other cases, the 18, for example, Campbelltown. No, I meant to do this the other way around. It's common. Yeah, common hand stamp 18. But the numeral 18 is extremely rare if you should find it. But question? Okay. So the point of this slide is what? Yes.
Jeerry, in your upper right-hand corner, do you see the word view?
View. This meeting is being
right next to recording.
No, I don't see a view.
Put your cursor up there. It'll pop up.
Okay.
If you open that, you can then arrange for the photos to be moved away from the slides.
I don't see view. Is it under something?
No, it should be next to recording.
Oh, recording down at the bottom, maybe.
What kind of system are you using?
I have no idea.
If you're using an iMac, if you're using a Macintosh or an iPad, you got a very different.
It's a Windows. So,
oh, well, then you should be good. They're giving you the right information.
Yeah, in the upper right, there's sign in, recording, and view. And if you click on view, you can change the actual view.
Yeah, top right on mine too.
I'm afraid I don't. I'm afraid I don't
impact us.
I
mean, I see the screen just fine because I've arranged it that way. But so
if you have the list of participants, you might be able to just minimize it as well.
Yeah,
it's another way of attacking the same problem. Okay. Anyway,
sorry.
We're seeing it just fine though.
Okay. I can see it fine.
Okay. But the point is, I want on the right-hand side of the stamps, I wanted to show you that there's lots of different types of manuscripts that were used. Some put in the number, some put in the name with a date, some use just dates, some use just a number, like the bottom one of 31. Okay. And for truth in advertising, I'll tell you that all the manuscripts on the right-hand side are in my collection. The hand stamps on the left-hand side are not in my collection. So same thing on this slide. I just wanted to mention that the stamps on the right are in my collection. The hand stamps on the left are not. But again, the same type of thing. These are the numerals that were allocated. I guess the only thing I'd highlight on this particular slide is ooze number 48. You can see that hand stamp was reallocated several different times. Okay. And it's most often obviously seen used as a Hobart canceller. But it is known, I've at least seen it on one ooze cover. So
how can you identify the cover? Does it have a return address on it or something like that? Some way of knowing that?
yeah, the postmaster in the case of ooze, the postmaster endorsed all of the covers with the town name and the date.
Oh,
an inaccurate date, which we'll talk about, but it's there. At least the name is correct. Okay, and then here again, the last of what was allocated. Okay, and again, the stamps, the manuscripts on the right are mine. The top two on the left are not mine, but the bottom pair of 74 is mine. And there is general consensus today that hand stamps 69, 70, 71, and 73 were never allocated. Not because they didn't have a need for them, but the post office actually ran out of the inking balls that went to go with the cancelers. All right. And one other thing, I heard a number of people say they were interested in Pacific Islands. Number 72. Okay. The first two couriers, the 1 penny blue and the 4 penny orange, the orange you see on the right-hand side right there. Those stamps were the first stamps ever used in Norfolk Islands, and they were canceled with 72. So if you collect Norfolk Islands, you should be looking for Canceller 72 on the Tasmanian first two issues. So, right. Okay. So here are the deprived offices that we know of. Again, I said there were about 65 of them. They're open between the 1st of November and before March of 1861. These are the ones that we know of because they mostly the postmasters wrote the name on the stamp as the cancel. A few of them we know from the postmaster's endorsement. That would be like had spin in the case of one, ooze, and Table Cape. The postmaster wrote the name of the town on the covers. All right. If you didn't have a cover, you wouldn't know it was Table Cape because they used cross hatches. All right. And in the case of a few like Bashino and Bashino and Shipwright's Point, we know those covers because of the contents, the interior contents of the letter indicate where they're from. Okay. And there are 21 listed here. All right. And what you're going to see next is 19 of those. And this is the large, I'm going to toot my own horn here for a minute. This is the largest number that has been in one collection to date. All right. David McNamee's collection that Abacus sold in sale 180 a few years back had 16 of 20. Okay. Now, the difference between a total of 20 when he sold his or when he exhibited his and the 21 now is because one town has been discovered since David McNamee exhibited and sold his collection. Okay. And that one being Victoria at the very bottom. So So this is, I'm hoping to wow you folks a little bit. All right. There's the bottom line. Okay. All right. First one, Bream Creek, opened in March of 1854, upgraded the post office in 1860. This is the only known example of Bream Creek postal history in the first allocation period. Okay. So,
could I just make a comment about that cover, Jeerry?
yes.
That endorsement at the lower left, that will be the postmaster's endorsement.
Correct.
Just to clarify, at the time, they had no date stamps issued to any of the country offices. And so every cover from the period should have a postmaster's endorsement on it with the name of the town and the date.
Correct.
So you've said there that it's a mail receiver endorsement. Definitely the postmaster.
Right.
Which suggests that he was doing too much work because he wrote Bream on the stamp as well as Bream Creek as the endorsement.
Yeah. And you'll see some examples where they actually, which is why I believe a number of the postmasters ended up writing the name and the date on the stamp, so they didn't have to write it again as an endorsement. So, thanks, Gary. Okay, Torquay. I've been corrected on that pronunciation. I've got it wrong in my head. But here is Torquay. This is the most frequently found first allocation manuscript. All right. And so for the most part, I wanted to show you some of the scarcer or bigger items, multiples that I have in my collection.
I mean, these are all beautiful examples. I mean, are all the stamps canceled so beautifully? Is it common?
No, they're not.
I didn't think so. Talk about that for a second.
So, but you'll see examples of some of them that are I think illegible, but we've figured out what they are. Okay, but here the post office opened on the 1st of October of 1854. And in the lower left, you'll see Torquay of 14 November 54. This is the earliest known postal marking from the town. Okay. And this was in David McNamee's collection that I bought in the Abacus auction. The bottom item, the strip of 5 of the 4 pence Courier, says registered Torquay. This is one of the largest multiples, not the largest. I've seen examples of a block of 6, but this is one of the largest items. This is formerly of Les Vinny's collection. Then the 2 penny strip of 6. That's one of the largest 2 penny postal manuscripts known. Okay, and the 1 penny of the strip of 4.
That's a lot of money. This, the strip of 4, the 4 pence. That's a lot of money back then.
It was. It was 4 pence to mail from between Hobart, Launceston, and the interior towns was a 4 pence. 1 penny internal town rates. So the 4 pence there was quite a bit at the time. Yeah.
It's also registered. So what was the registration rate?
I actually don't know that.
I think it was a shilling at that time.
Okay.
So that would account for 3 of them.
3 of them, right?
Yeah, so double rate later.
Okay. And of course, that assumes there weren't any other stamps on the letter. So, okay.
Nice.
Torquay today is Devonport. Oh, it's written there, Devonport, which is Tasmania's 3rd largest city. So, it had it expanded greatly from 1854 to the current times. Okay, so here's Bushino. This is one that opened as a receive house. Now receive house was a lower class post office. There was actually three categories. There's a post office, there's a mail receive house, and then there's a receive house. And the difference was basically in the amount of traffic mail that they incurred revenue, as well as the amount of services that they offered. Okay, receive house was the lowest. Bushino was actually attached to Waterloo Point as the primary post office that supported this town. Bushino was a fishing port and trading post on the East Coast. So, in this particular case, we know the contents or the point of origin from the contents of the letter. And in this case, the markings down at the bottom, below the stamps, you'll see it says ship 4459 and initials. This is actually from the sender. This is not from the postmaster. Okay, the postmaster actually just put the straight lines on there. So it'd be nice if the postmaster had endorsed it, but this, I believe, is the only known example of Bushino. So I'm not positive of that, whereas I am positive that Bream is the only known example from Bream Creek. Okay.
It's a beautiful cover. It's just I find it frustrating because two stamps, I have three slices on it, and one has got two. It's like wasn't very consistent. So you know if he wasn't consistent on this cover, who knows what you find with these things?
Right.
You know, it's like oh. I don't know.
Okay, so here's Ooze. Ooze actually opened in, you can see, 1835. So its post office was actually quite old. It actually received barred numeral 48 on the 1st of November of 53. But the post office closed in November of 1854, and the then postmaster returned the canceller to the GPO in Hobart. And it closed because they were unable to find a contractor to transport the mail between Ooze and Hobart. And Hobart, and Ooze was about as far, is kind of in the middle of Tasmania, but it was as far west as there were basically settlements in the mid 1850s. Okay, so it was a distance to Hobart. But the post office did reopen in February of 1854. So you can see it was only closed for, about 3 months, right? But when it reopened, it did so without the canceller, which had been reallocated. Okay. And so the new postmaster was resorted to canceling with pen and ink. And this is one of the cases where you can see the sloping lines on the stamp, but the postmaster did endorse it, Ooze, on the 29/12/58. Now, the interesting feature of all first allocation Ooze covers are the fact that the postmaster endorsements have the wrong month. The dates are correct. The years are correct, but the months are wrong. Okay. And in this particular example, in the bottom right, it's covered up here, so I can't quite see it at the moment, but I think it says July in the red Hobart prepaid marking. So this cover, I should say, was actually sent in July of 58. And so here is a table that I took from an article that was in the Courier, which is the journal of the Tasmanian Philatelic Society. And this I've modified it to bring it up to date from when this was first published in 1997. But here are the nine there are 9 known covers, 8 of which I've examined. Okay, but you see the postmaster's endorsement always has December. All right, and I don't know why, because the Hobart prepaid marking that is in every one of those covers has a different month. Okay, so and if it could have been, and for a long time, when I've been reading the literature, one would say Thomas Stace got it wrong. One would say Charles Higgins got it wrong. But the fact is, both of them got it wrong, and we're using December. Okay, because the first 2 covers were under Thomas Stace. The rest of them were under Charles Higgins. Now, I haven't been able to examine any covers before the stamps and cancellers were first issued on the 1st of November. There must be some, because the post office opened in 1835, all right? But I was curious to see how far back does this error go? Did it extend to earlier postmasters, or did it just happen under Stace and Higgins? It's a mystery still, anyways. But Charles Higgins remained the postmaster in Ooze until 1884, but the first known cover in the second allocation period is correct. So he has the correct month in the endorsement, as well as it relates to the Hobart prepaid marking. So someone maybe pulled him aside and said, hey, look, what's going on? So okay. Here's 2 covers from Shipwright Point, which again opened up as a receive house. This is on the Huon Inlet down south of Hobart. All known examples are canceled with an X. There's no PM endorsement whatsoever. And the history says that they're tied by it's identified by the town by the contents of the letters. Unfortunately, the contents of the letters did not come to me. So I have not been able to actually confirm this, but all of the literature and all of the auction catalogs point to these as being Shipwright's Point. There was a comment? Okay. Okay. Hatspin, small town west of Launceston. So this opened as a post office in March of 1856. And during the first allocation period, there were 3 different postmasters. One of them, you can see in the top example, did follow the postmaster's instructions in using a grid on the stamp and then endorsing it with hatspin of 8 July of 56. So this, a fairly early cover from hatspin. The second one was under a different postmaster. You can see here they're just used X's. There is no postmaster endorsement. The number 14, 22 October 58 actually is from the sender. He was actually numbering the letters that he was writing to whoever they were going to in Sydney. And this, the second cover here, the bottom one, is a number of, there's a number of these in this correspondence, and I have seen number 13, for example, which uses X's on 6 pennies. The rate here is problematic. I have no idea why they use 6 pence twice to get to Sydney. But again, it could have been overweight, but there's no indications of that. Now there is a Launceston prepaid marking on the back of this. I should have shown that, but it was from the 23rd of October 58, which kind of confirms the date there on the front. So fourth, wish I had more to show for fourth, but this is the only one that looked nice enough to show. I don't have any covers, but the post office opened in 56. Almost all the ones I've seen are with name and postmark. Okay.
Have you been able to do a census?
No, but you know what? I've been thinking about trying to engage the Tasmanian Philatelic Society. They have a really good bulletin board on their website, and trying to engage to start getting a census of these items. So, okay, Don, again, which opened a post office here in 56. Here's two examples. The top one, again, came out of the Abacus auction 180. It was in 81, auction 81. This was in John Bell's collection. And the lower one was in Hugh Wynn's collection. Okay. And all the first allocation covers used the term River Don for the town name and have the date associated with them. So this one actually is another one I would say is, it's rated rare on Randall Askin's table that he did, but this one isn't as rare as he has indicated. This one's, you come across this one more frequently. The problem is you very rarely find it with a full name, because the postmaster used a large script, and when it's on a single stamp, it's only a partial. Hagley, again, opened a post office in 56. There was a big splurge of post offices opening in 1856. All right. But these two, are historic, or I should say historically, but mostly you find them with the town name and the date on the stamp. So. Burgess, okay. Again, opened in July of 1856. This is the only known cover that have Burgess manuscripts on them. This is actually a folded letter. And an example from an individual stamp of 1860 there. So. Lymington Nile, again, opened in 1856, broken record here. This is another example out of David McNamee's collection that was sold by Abacus in sale 180. This town is also known with the manuscript of Lymington Nile Bridge.
Can I just say that I didn't pay Jeerry for all of these very welcome endorsements?
So, well, I'm hoping you're going to keep supplying them so I can find more. So,
doing my best.
Okay, so I just found an item on eBay that I purchased, that I posted on the bulletin board of the Tasmanian Philatelic Society. John Harding, who's a excellent postal historian there, thought that it might be a partial of Lymington Nile. So it would be good if that's the case. I'm not convinced quite yet, so I didn't show it. But if it has John's endorsement, that's pretty good. Okay, here's Victoria. So very little is known about this post office. All of the early literature says this post office opened on 1st of January of 1856. John Harding, who I just mentioned, believes it opened on the 1st of January 1857. I'm kind of on the line of it opened closer to October 1st, 1856. And that's because there was a reorganization within Tasmania for some of the districts, and Victoria became the center for one of the new districts, and Henry Kane became the first deputy registrar for deaths, births, and marriages. I think that's the right order. It could be birth, marriages, deaths, but
Actually, deaths and marriages.
It's what?
It's actually births, deaths, and marriages.
Okay, so the first one I said. Okay, good. And that's because he was also the first postmaster, or I should say he was the first mail receiver. They don't call them postmasters when they are only a mail receive house. They call them mail receivers. But he was the first one, and that job started on the 1st of October. So I think the mail receive house may have opened a little bit earlier than the 1st of January, 1857. Still debate. A lot more research needs to be done. The post office was upgraded probably to a post office in around 1862. There's a Gazette notice that appoints John Bailey as the postmaster in 1862. So it's about that time, which we think it became a post office. There are only 2 known examples. Both of them were found in the United States. Both of them were first seen on eBay. The first one, the top one, I discovered and purchased, and it came out of Ohio. The second one I saw on an eBay lot out of Oregon, and its whereabouts unknown. I was unsuccessful in getting that one. So, but again, these are the only 2 known examples. And these are both dated in 1860. Handwriting analysis has been done to confirm that they match the handwriting of John Bailey, who was the 3rd mail receiver at that time. It went from Henry Kane, Theophilus Kane, John Bailey, and then John Bailey, I guess, Sr., who was the father of the first John Bailey. So, but today, an interesting thing about, I'll say that Victoria, they actually changed the name around in the I think it was the late 1870s, early 1880s. I've forgotten now which is which. It's because a lot of the mail that was addressed there to Victoria actually went to the state of Victoria on the mainland, as opposed to going to the town. So they ended up changing their name to Ranelagh here, and today it's a suburb of Huonville. Oh, one more theory on why these 2 items dated 1860, both discovered in the United States. Victoria at the time was a large agricultural community, big hops growing, but also orchards. And it was in this area, Victoria and the surrounding areas, that started selling apples up here into the northern hemisphere. Their biggest markets being the UK, United States, and Canada. And so I think a lot of this trade started taking off in the 1860s. I think a lot of the mail coming here may have been solicitations for, in fact, selling their produce in the northern hemisphere. It's all speculation. Okay, Chudley, and opened in 1856. This is the only example of Chudley that I have seen. This was out of the Bell collection in Abacus Auction 181, and but it's a very nice strip, cut in a little bit, but very nice strip of four. I mean, Snake Banks opened in October of 1856. Here's one that is based on the contents of the letter, but you can see in this particular case is the grid mark put on by the postmaster, but no endorsement. Okay. And again, the contents of this folded letter is dated September 1858. So we have at least we have a time frame and a place where it was mailed from. Oh, this is also going to John Leake in Campbelltown. He John Leake actually saved all of his mail, and he's a lot of the postal history is from him, or to him, actually to him. So, Cable Cape. Again, here we have it endorsed. Both covers Cable Cape, but neither with a date. Both have the typical grid cancellation, which is what the postmaster mandated. Fortunately, both of these have on the reverse have the Launceston prepaid transit markings, both dated in December of 1858. So we know the dates. These are the only two Table Cape covers that I'm aware of also, but I don't know if there's any more. Oyster Cove opened in early 1857. You can see here two different types, one with the name and one with name and date. Okay. The second item, the pair, dated the 2nd of March of 1861, is the latest known date of the first allocation, or the last known date of the first allocation. So, which helps us bridge or understand the time of when they withdrew the first allocation cancelers and issued second allocation cancelers sometime in the mid-March timeframe. So here's one that, I asked if they were all nice and neat. This one says Swant for Swanton. And I keep looking for better copies, but there's not too many out there to be had. Again, opened in September of 1857. And all the examples that I have seen just do say Swant. Tamar, okay. So it opened as a receive house in December of 1857. And the first one, to me, it's hard to read, but once you figure out what it says, I understand it from that early 19th century script. But it says Tamar, and then April 12, and the second one says Tamar, then it just says May. Both being used, however, in 1860. This sage green shade of the 2-pence chalon was issued in 1860. And since the second allocation barred numerals were sent out in March of 1861, these can only be 1860 dates. So The first one is out of, again, David McNamee's collection. The second one I found on eBay um, in December of last month. So it was a nice pickup. Swansea, second office. Now, Swansea has a very interesting I think a lot of people are very confused by this, but um, I think it's pretty straightforward. But anyways, um, in 1835, actually in 1832, a post office opened on the East Coast called Waterloo Point, and for years it operated up there, and it was officially known by the post office as Waterloo Point. The inhabitants of the area, however, referred to themselves as being in the town of Swansea. And so letters that were posted at the post office of Waterloo Point were often canceled with a grid with a number 58, but endorsed with the name Swansea. Okay. And also a date. But then in 1858, another post office opened up that was Swansea. And these are two examples from there. But it was about 12 kilometers north of the post office at Waterloo Point, and it was on the estate of John Amos. And again, this was a receive house. It was only open for a short period of time. John Amos was a member of the legislature, I believe. But I believe in reading some of the literature, he was kind of forced to be at his estate in this time frame. So the post office granted him an opportunity to have his own little post office there while he was forced to be at his estate. And then it closed right after that. But in one case, you can see it's the piece. It's not even a real front, but it's a piece. The stamp is canceled with these 3 lines, and it's endorsed Swansea. And then the other one is actually the endorsement is on the stamps. Okay. Now, those covers mailed from the post office at Waterloo Point that I have seen always have the number 58 on the cancel, even though they're endorsed Swansea. Those that are from the second office never use the 58, but are also endorsed Swansea. So
I just checked it online. The surname on those letters or pieces is Mather, not Mother. So I was reading it.
Oh, well, Mather, yes.
Yeah.
A rather famous family in Hobart.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that was my last one. Okay. All right. So the summary here is that I like manuscript cancels, and they're actually used throughout all of the periods of Tasmania's postal history, but most of the ones you find in the first allocation. They're highly sought after by me, so if you have any, I'm interested. But also, only about a third of the deprived offices have been identified. A lot of it means if it's a single stamp, it's going to have a name on it, because the chicken scratches and the grids, you just can't tell where they come from. So you're going to have a name on it, or you're going to have a cover with a name to find any of these new ones. As I mentioned before, the Huan, just was first discovered in 2017. The second copy there was in 2023. And a second copy of this Tamar manuscript I mentioned was just found last year. Okay. But I also want to make one last comment about um, if you are buying manuscripts, be very careful because stamps became uh, available to be used for fiscal or revenue duties beginning in October of 1863. And they have significantly less value than postally used stamps. And in fact, it has also generated a market for fakes, fake cancels, trying to cover up the fiscal pen marks to try to get people to think that they were postally used. So
Oftentimes, so like they'd wash the fiscals.
yes, and sometimes they're washed, and again, and they're often offered as unused without gum. So if they're without gum, you need to be very careful.
Can't
Not
assume.
at adults.
So,
Yeah.
and actually, that's my last slide. But if you want to know where all these places are, that's where they are so far. So that's it. Uh, I enjoyed giving it. I hope you enjoyed seeing some very rare postal history.
Yeah, terrific.
Fantastic.
I think it's a brilliant. John Shepard just joined a moment or two ago.
Oh,
Apparently,
John. Hi, John.
Tasmania's an hour behind us.
he's muted. I don't know why. I'm going to ask him to mute. I don't know what's happened, but he didn't get the link. I don't know why, but so he emailed me about 20 minutes ago saying, "How come is the presentation still on?" Yes.
Yeah.
Oh well.
John was actually the author of the this one table that I referenced
Ah,
from Ooze. This is from John's article back in 1997 that I, updated with the new material that had come
right.
in
Oh, there it is.
since
Yeah.
then. But yeah,
Oh, he's having some difficulty. I see him.
okay.
I see his
But anyways,
name.
so
But
John
okay.
has some pedigree here with Tasmanian
Yeah.
postal history.
So you can come in late. That's all right. Yeah. Oh, I thought it's brilliant.
Much enjoyed.
I
Can I
obviously have
ask a question
revised my
about
thinking
ooze?
about the postmaster's manuscripts. So thank you, Jeerry.
And thank you for continuing to sell the material.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question about ooze? I
Certainly.
noticed that right now it's got a very small population. Was there a reason why 100, 200 years ago they actually had a post office there or a postal system there?
Um, the honest answer is I can't tell you, but the Ooze was a farming community. It was very large estates. So
I think I know the answer to this one. It was on the main coach route between Hobart and Launceston.
Oh, thanks,
actually,
Gary.
Gary, it was not. It was
It
further
wasn't
out.
further west, was it?
It was further west than Green
Okay.
Ponds.
Right.
All right. So
On the main road now.
oh, maybe now, yeah. But they were very large estates, and the owners, were very wealthy. They were actually doing a lot of business and investments in Hobart. I've looked at a couple of the letters. There, one of them goes to a business on the East Coast. One of them went to a solicitor in Hobart. It was very famous. He was opposed to the transportation of convicts. I can't remember his name at the moment, but so they. I think there's many of these survive because of the fact that they were a lot of business related. Any other questions?
No other questions? How can that be? Let's always ask a
Okay.
question. Is there a chart that indicates when the deprived offices started up? Because, for example, not all of them would be open in what's it, 1860, 1851? Was it 51?
Well,
53.
1850,
Sorry, no, 53. I mean,
1853 was the beginning of the first allocation period.
yeah.
Okay.
So some started, and then
So
and then
here,
a few others
so
other came on.
okay, so number 64 of Hobart Town was the last one allocated on the 1st of November, the the best I can tell. Okay. So I mentioned that 3 or 4 towns opened up after that. And then you can see there Three Hut Point, Port Signet, and Birch Bay.
Oh, I see. So it's all done by okay. Then that would answer it. Then
Okay, so
they
those first 3 opened up after the 1st of November. And actually they were all opened in late 1853, and they received those cancellation devices. All right. The 4th one that I said might have received one was actually Bream Creek, that I showed as a deprived office. Randall Asklin, in the same article that where I got this table from, said that he thought it may have received Canceller 73. Although now the consensus is that 73 was never allocated. John Harding, in an unpublished report from, again, December, just last month, said that he thought number 34 was reallocated to Bream Creek, but he was just speculating. He doesn't know that for a fact. His speculation was that Great Swanport, which received 34 and closed fairly quickly, everyone up to this point thinks that it was reallocated to Grove. But again, there's a lot of questions about that. I've seen 2 Grove covers. They have an unreadable hand stamp on them. But I and John Harding believe that those hand stamps were actually applied when the covers arrived in Hobart, because they were unmarked. Okay. Because all you get is just a corner of the cancellation device. Only about maybe 10% of the cancellers there on both covers. All right. But John believes instead of being reallocated to Grove, it was reallocated to Bream Creek. But again, we don't know that yet. So we just need more material to help sort some of this stuff out. Okay.
One thing which I've noticed is that until you get up to about number 68, until you get up to about number 60, apart from Port Arthur, virtually everything is in alphabetical order. Would I be right in thinking that all those from now you've got that as in front of us now, everything from 59 onwards was actually a replacement?
No, but
or a new or a
no,
brand new
but
office.
you are correct. They were allocated in alphabetical order from Anthill Ponds to Waterloo Point. And then the 2 big towns, Launceston and Hobart, received the next ones, but they were out of alphabetical order.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where Norfolk Island is obviously a quite a late addition, isn't it?
Which one?
Norfolk Island, getting 72.
Oh, yes. Yes, there's an interesting story there. The ship carrying the stamps and the canceller to Norfolk Island, they actually had a mutiny, and the a lot of the stamps were stolen, and the chancellor apparently was stolen or was found when the ship came back. There were a few letters intact. There were a few. Most of the letters were opened and pillaged. It could have been that the chancellor was there. Now, John Harding's theory is that when this ship left, it actually carried barred numeral 69, and that chancellor was lost.
Oh, right.
Okay. Again, it's all speculation. We don't know for a fact. And when the ship was sent out a second time carrying more stamps, it went with Chancellor 72. But
Yes.
I don't know. We don't know. But 72 is a rare chancellor, and you can see there has 3 R's on it, so out of 4.
Yes.
Yeah, this was serious business when they set this up. And they set up what is it, 58 cancels? 50, 60 some odd cancels, all steel dies. That wasn't free. The government put money at it.
It is. And I have to say the post office, colonial post office at the time, was very conscious of the money being spent on the post office. And they didn't like spending money. So particularly in the 1850s, they didn't like spending money. So
somebody else had a question. I interrupted, I think. No?
Since I'm on this page, the lower right 4D Courier grid mark with a 58. We were talking about Waterloo Point and Swansea. So again, with a 58, you just know that it's Waterloo Point and not the second office at Swansea. So.
Oh, John Shepard just did a chat. Yeah, it seems I guess you can do that. Are there 2 Grove covers? I thought.
Yes, I've seen 2. I've seen 2 Grove covers. I don't own either one of them.
Can I just say, Jeerry, that this is one of the best Zoom presentations that I've seen in the philatelic space. You really brought the material to life with all of the anecdotes and the background to the towns and where they're located and all that sort of stuff. I think particularly with numeral cancels, there's a tendency for people just to fill the gaps and to not really understand anything much about allocations or geography or anything like that. And I think your presentation just shows both the value and the importance of context and really understanding a lot more about the system than just the fact that these various officers use these particular cancels. And as I say, in a lot of cases, people don't care whether they know where they're from or not. They just want to fill the spaces. So I think your presentation has a tremendous amount to offer, not just to collectors of Australian colonies or of Tasmania.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I like the fact that you took the opportunity of using the scale of the screen so these things aren't postage stamp size. They're large enough so you can see them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's very important, I think, because of especially in trying to read some of this script.
Yeah, and in some ways, doing a Zoom presentation is better because if we were all sitting in a room, once you get back 3 or 4 rows, you can't. What are you looking at? How do you see it? So, so it's good.
Well, currently, I'm trying to research all of the postmasters and postmistresses and mail receivers from the very beginning up to the end of the first allocation period. So about 1803 when they first settled there to 1861, and trying
Wouldn't
to
that
get a
be,
good handle, trying to
yeah,
get a good handle on that.
wouldn't that be in government records? Get someone from the Tasmanian Society to kind of like walk into town and
A lot of it
right.
is, a lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't. I mean, I've been
Oh,
struggling with. I mentioned Victoria.
uh,
There's so little available there. So, and there's no announcements at all until the fourth postmaster is named. So,
oh, interesting.
There's also no central repository for all the post office records in any of the states. And I'm afraid that current custodians of archives have um, a terrible disregard for the historical value of the records that they are in charge of. I was talking to a chap from Perth the other day who was telling me horror stories of what the government records office over there had done in disposing of a tremendous amount of important historical documents and original books. It was just scandalous, but unfortunately, there seems to be very little interest these days in general spheres of the written word.
it's a shame. And again, I mentioned that the in the 1850s, in particular, the post office was not spending a lot of money on records at all, and not doing a lot of publications of the announcements. A lot are there, but only about 50% are probably there.
Did they fear the post? Did they fear how much the post office is costing them? In other words, did they think it was because there was so few people there?
Well,
Did
I
they
think
think?
initially there was a fear that the post office was a drain. Okay,
Mhm.
but the inhabitants wanted it.
They
Okay,
needed it. They
and and
needed
quite
it.
and quite honestly, um, uh, when the inhabitants wrote to the journals, like to the Hobart Courier or the Launceston Times, and or various newspapers there, okay, the government actually listened to their complaints, and the reason for this is because the convicts outnumbered the non-convicts for a long time. Okay, and they did not want to get into a situation where the free people were against them as well as the convicts.
That'd be a
Okay,
problem.
so they really, really paid attention to when the press started printing things that were bad.
Yeah.
Okay, John is even though he can't communicate, somehow he's I guess he hears us. I don't know. But anyway, he says um, he says that most Tasmanian PO records for this period were destroyed. And then he says he has all postmasters and appointment dates. Send me your email via Steve Z.
Oh, okay.
So, and Mark DeSerio said, "Have you used Trove?" Oh,
Yes, I use Trove all the time.
yeah. And then no, John, and then that this is going back and forth between Fred Danes left, and he looks forward to the next one. Okay, I'm just reading. Uh, okay, that's what I'm getting here.
Jeerry, is
So
it
Steve,
possible? Is it possible?
go ahead,
Jeerry,
Richard.
is it possible to move on to what to move this on one page to the next section of allocation numbers for a second?
This one?
Right, yeah, that's the one. Yes, yes, yes. I was actually just looking for Port Arthur because I noticed that Port Arthur, in actual fact, has got number 19, and I wondered if that was a reallocation. But I can't see a Port Arthur anywhere else. Of course, that was quite a big convict place, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So the Port Arthur is interesting. They actually closed the post office, excuse me, on 31 October 1853, the day before they allocated the canceling devices. All right.
Oh, right.
And Cascades, number 48, actually, wait a minute, let me go back. I'm sorry, Port Arthur. I'm sorry. Port Arthur is number 19.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Ask your question again. I got confused for a minute.
Yes, my question was that Arthur's really the only one which is way out on the alphabetical listing. And I did
Correct.
wonder whether that was in actual fact originally allocated to someone with something with a different name. But there's no other Port Arthur, and as Port Arthur was big convict place, I would have expected them to have one.
It seemed to me that there was a town another town that closed. And Port Arthur opened.
Yes.
I can't think of
Okay.
I can't think of what it was right now.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Probably began with C.
Yeah, hopefully it began with C.
Yeah.
Although
Well, yeah, and that's what I was thinking. That's what I was
although
thinking.
the only thing I could come up with was Burgess, because Burgess was open beforehand, it closed, and then it reopened in 1856 again, and you saw two covers from that. All right.
Yeah.
So
Well, I decided to be quite. I decided
but that
to be
would have
quite
been
clever.
out of order. So
Yes. I decided to be quite clever, so I looked it up in Wikipedia and thought it probably had a different name previously, but as Port Arthur was established in 1830, it couldn't have changed its name in the 1850s. When I say 1930, I mean 1830.
yeah. So
Yeah.
There's always an anomaly somewhere, isn't there?
yeah. I'll have to do some research on that now. Next time we meet, maybe I will have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Well, our next meeting will be with the British Empire Study Group. So it'll be a typical Thursday night meeting. And Andy Napier is going to be talking about Fiji overprints. The title is The Story of Fiji's 21st Century Provisionals, the temporary solution that has so far lasted 20 years.
Yes.
So
fueled by a certain dealer in New York who keeps promoting them.
Actually, I didn't bother till like a couple of years ago, and I just kind of let it run its own course. But I've been there now, so it's kind of interesting.
Mm.
So they use those stamps. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this was a great presentation. I will put this on the website somehow or another. I will certainly have a link to it to everybody in the society, and so you'll get copies of the links. So you'll be able to reference it. And I'm so glad, Jeerry, that you make this when there's a presentation like this. It makes the very uncommon stuff common. So I think that's I think that's a good thing. I mean it's not common. I think we all know that, but there's just so much of it.
Yeah.
So it must be common. See?
Steve, one question for you. You said John Shepard was going to send you his email?
Yeah, I have his email. I'll put the two of you together.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Steve, Michael Eastick says hi.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Go on, stick your head in there for a moment.
Oh, my goodness. Looks younger every day.
Yeah.
That's good. So I guess that's it. I mean, I'm not. I don't have to close it off. But if there's nothing else to talk about, or anybody wants to chat about something else, we can.
I have to go. Thanks very much for organising it, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we have more of these going on, as you know. We keep track of the schedule, and everybody will be able to participate to the degree they want to in the next one.
Excellent. Okay, see you all later. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for inviting us. Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, everybody but you. Only kidding.